Imagine you are standing in the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, in front of the largest painting in the building. It is enormous, nearly 4 meters tall, more than 4 meters wide, and it fills the wall completely, the way only a few paintings in history manage to fill a wall. You are looking at a group of men in 17th century dress, caught mid-motion, preparing to march. Light falls dramatically across them. A captain in black extends one gloved hand. His lieutenant, dressed in yellow, turns at an angle. Behind them, a forest of spears, a drum, a dog, a child running, smoke, shadow, organized chaos. You feel the scale of it. You feel the energy, and you assume, the way anyone would assume, that you are looking at the painting Rembrandt made. You are not. What you are standing in front of is a fragment. The painting you are looking at, the one considered the masterpiece of Dutch Golden Age art, the painting that anchors the entire permanent collection of one of the great museums of the world, is not the original. Sometime before 1715, and for reasons that were never fully recorded, the night watch was cut. Strips were removed from all 4 sides. The painting was made smaller, and what was removed was destroyed, and no one alive today has ever seen the complete work that Rembrandt finished in 1642. We know what we lost. And once you understand what was cut away, the painting you thought you knew becomes something else entirely. The cut. The Night Watch was commissioned in the late 1630s by a militia company in Amsterdam, a civic guard unit, one of several that existed across the Dutch Republic as both defensive organizations and social clubs for wealthy men. The captain, Frans Banning Koch, contracted Rembrandt to paint a group portrait of himself and 17 of his men, along with several additional figures. This was not an unusual commission. Group portraits of civic guards were a genre in Amsterdam, and there are several other examples from the same period hanging in the same museum. What was unusual was what Rembrandt did with the format. Most group portrait painters of the era faced the same problem. How do you paint 18 men who have each paid for the privilege of being depicted without producing something that looks like a school photograph? The conventional solution was to arrange everyone in rows, give each face equal prominence, and ensure that every patron got a clear and dignified likeness. This was what people expected. This was, in a sense, what they had paid for. Rembrandt ignored all of it. He painted a scene, not a lineup. He created depth and motion where his peers created flatness and order. He drenched the composition in shadow and pulled certain figures into sharp, almost theatrical light, while letting others recede into near invisibility. Some of the men who had paid equal sums for the commission are barely visible in the finished work, partially obscured by other figures, by spears, by darkness, by the simple fact that Rembrandt had decided the painting needed to look like something was actually happening, regardless of what his patrons had been expecting. This was an astonishing act of artistic confidence. It was also, eventually, the source of significant resentment. Before 1715, the painting was moved from the militia hall, where it had originally hung, to Amsterdam's town hall. The room it was placed in was too small, and so, with what appears to have been no particular anguish recorded by anyone involved, the painting was trimmed on all 4 sides to make it fit. From the top, a strip was removed. From the right and bottom, smaller amounts. And from the left, the most consequential cut. 2 entire figures were removed. 2 men who had paid to be in this painting, who had stood for Rembrandt and been committed to canvas, were simply cut off and discarded. We know they existed because of a small copy made before the cutting, now held in the Amsterdam Museum, which shows the original composition, with the 2 missing men clearly visible on the far left edge. What the missing figures tell us. The copy is small and not especially detailed, but it is enough. In the original composition, the 2 removed men stood at the far left of the group, slightly apart from the central action. Their presence changed the geometry of the painting in a way that is easy to underestimate until you see it. With them included, the composition had a wider base, a more deliberate sense of breadth. The captain's extended hand, the one pointing forward into the scene, was not pointing into the middle of the canvas, but toward the edge, toward the removed figures, as if gesturing at them specifically, drawing the viewer's eye across the full span of the group before arriving at the central drama. Without them, the gesture floats. The captain's hand points toward a space that now contains nothing in particular, and viewers have spent 3 centuries wondering what exactly he is indicating. The answer, as best as we can reconstruct it, is the men who are no longer there. There is something quietly devastating about this. Rembrandt spent months painting every figure with his full attention. The glint of armor, the texture of fabric, the specific weight of each face. These were real people. They paid to be remembered. and they were cut away and burned or discarded or simply lost, and their names are known to us only because the records of the commission survived. They are in the document, they are not in the painting. The Girl in Yellow. Among the figures that did survive the cutting, one has generated more sustained debate than any other, and she is not one of the named militiamen. She is a girl, small, running through the crowd somewhere behind the captain's left shoulder, dressed in a yellow dress and carrying what appears to be a dead chicken strapped to her belt. She's clearly not a militiaman. She is too young and wrong in every way for the official nature of the scene. She is also lit with extraordinary care. The yellow of her dress catches the light in a way that makes her one of the brightest objects in an otherwise dark composition, pulling the viewer's eye toward her repeatedly despite her small size and peripheral position. Rembrandt clearly wanted her to be seen, but who she is and why she is there has never been definitively established. Some art historians believe she represents the emblem of the militia company. The chicken is a reference to a claw, which appeared on the company's coat of arms, and the figure may be a kind of symbolic mascot rather than a literal person. Others have suggested she is a portrait of someone real, a servant, a daughter, a woman of personal significance to Rembrandt himself. There are scholars who have pointed out that she bears a resemblance to Saskia, Rembrandt's wife, who died in 1642, the same year the painting was completed. If this is true, if Rembrandt embedded a portrait of his dying or newly dead wife into the most ambitious commission of his career, then The Girl in Yellow is not a symbolic footnote, but the emotional center of the entire work. And the painting has a private meaning running underneath its public one, that none of the men who paid for it ever suspected. Rembrandt after the Night Watch. It is worth pausing to note what happened to Rembrandt in the years following this painting, because the arc of his life after 1642 is as dramatic and as dark as anything in the image itself. In the decade after the Night Watch, his reputation began to fracture. The painting had been controversial enough. The men who found themselves partially obscured or poorly lit had not all been gracious about it. Rembrandt's style was changing in ways that Amsterdam's wealthy patrons found increasingly difficult to follow. He painted with thicker, more textured brushwork. His surfaces became rougher and more expressive. The polished finish that the market wanted was not what he was producing. Commissions slowed. His income collapsed. In 1654, he had an illegitimate child with his housekeeper, Hendrik Stoffels, which scandalized enough of his remaining clients to accelerate his financial decline. In 1656, he was declared insolvent. His house, his collection of art and curiosities, one of the most extraordinary private collections in Amsterdam, accumulated over decades, was sold at auction to pay his debts. He moved into a smaller house in a poorer part of the city. Hendrik had died in 1663. His son Titus, who had managed his affairs in his later years, died in 1668. Rembrandt died in 1669, nearly alone, and was buried in an unmarked grave. He left behind roughly 300 paintings, nearly 100 etchings, and 2,000 drawings. The Night Watch, the painting that marked both the height of his reputation and the beginning of its unraveling, outlived everything else he owned. What the painting actually is. Standing in front of the Night Watch today, knowing all of this, it becomes possible to look at it differently, not as a masterpiece frozen at the summit of a career, but as an object with a history as turbulent as the man who made it. It was cut, it was moved, it was nearly destroyed in 1911, when a man attacked it with a knife, and again in 1975, when another man did the same, and again in 1990, when someone sprayed it with acid. It has been restored, studied, scanned, and x-rayed so many times that it is one of the most technically documented paintings in existence. And still, after all of that, the Girl in Yellow has no confirmed identity. The captain's pointing hand has no confirmed object. The two missing men on the left have no surviving image. The painting that Rembrandt finished in 1642 cannot be fully known, not because the records are incomplete, though they are, but because the painting itself was altered before most of the world ever got a chance to see it, and what was taken away was not written down with any particular care, because the people who took it away did not think they were destroying something. They thought they were fitting a painting into a room. That is the part that stays with me, not the loss itself, but the casualness of it. The fact that one of the defining images of Western art was trimmed to fit a wall without ceremony, without record, without apparent awareness that something was being lost forever. And that we have spent 3 centuries looking at the result and calling it a masterpiece without knowing exactly what we are missing. Which raises, I think, a question worth sitting with. How many other things do we look at as complete that are actually fragments? I'd love to know what you think. Did you know the painting had been cut before watching this? And do you think the girl in yellow is meant to be Rembrandt's wife, a symbol, or something else entirely? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to read your thoughts.